Hey, what's up? This is Chuck D. You are listening to Toronto Mike right here, right now, in the place to be.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1764 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Toronto's Waterfront BIA. Check out what's happening on Toronto's waterfront this summer. Blue Sky Agency, the official distributor of Silent's quiet, comfortable, and customizable office pods. Create sanctuary within your workspace. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today because it's been so long, making his return to Toronto Mic'd, it's Lorne Honickman. Welcome back, Lorne.
When was I here? It's
2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. and everybody understands why I'm back.
Of course. Well, everybody heard the Did you listen, by any chance, did you listen back to the episode we recorded 2 weeks ago?
I'll be honest, I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
But I thought when I left, because your system broke down, that, I said, okay, Mike, I feel bad. I'm going to come back. We'll redo it. We'll do it again. I understand. I've got some time right now, et cetera, et cetera. And then I find out that you actually found 40 minutes of what we did?
Everything we recorded, I recovered it. So it was a corrupt file, and I was giving up. Like I was going to, I lost my first episode. So in 1,700 and whatever, 60 something episodes, whatever, right. I had lost my first ever episode, and it was 40 minutes of Lorne Honickman. And you were a sweetheart that you said, I'll come back and we'll do it again. Because thank goodness, I can't miss this opportunity to chat with my lawyer, Lorne Honickman. But I did recover it, and then I dropped it. Please tell me, would you have preferred I had deleted that 40 minutes?
No, there was a part of it, and I'm sure you and I had a differing opinion about it when we spent, I think you said it was only 6 minutes.
6 minutes, yeah.
It felt like 60 minutes to me, I'm being honest, where we were debating whether or not it was Mark Daly's voice that we were hearing in a Rush song.
Subdivisions.
And anyway.
So you felt we lingered too long, but...
And I know you told me, oh, no, that's not true. And I know my real close friend, Al McCormick, who, and that's how I found out, by the way, that you actually recovered
right.
part of this, because he texted me, he said, hey, Lorne, yeah, that was great. I listened to that thing you did with Toronto Mike, subdivisions. Oh, and by the way, I think it is Mark's voice. And I went, oh, no.
But did you notice that's what he focused on? That's what resonates with people, was our 6 minutes on Subdivisions by Rush, because I believe it is a sample of Mark Daly on City Pulse or City News. And you hated that 6 minutes. I saw it in your face. I recorded the video. I saw it in your face. You hated every second of that 6 minutes.
Well, no, it was the first 25 seconds I was good with it. And it was after 25 to 30 seconds I went, okay, this could be Mark. Anyway, that could be Mark. Yep.
Well, notes came in from that 40 minutes I dropped. And what I did at the end, because it ends abruptly, because to tell people what happened, my hard drive filled up. And it stopped all the software that was recording us. And I have a backup. So both were stopped, and both files were corrupted because of the way it stopped. So the lesson I learned is, and it hadn't happened in, how many years have I been doing this, right, Lorne?
Right. So
this was the first time. And I'm almost glad it was you. And I mean that because, imagine I'm sitting down with, I played
somebody important.
Chuck D, okay? I played him off the top. Imagine I'm sitting with Chuck D and that happens. And I think I would just be as white as a ghost, and I would be like, I don't know what I would do. I would just
Right.
hate myself for the rest of my life. But it happened. I learned a lesson, right? Like with your kids, it's like as long as you learn from it, right? And here we are back. And here's the notes that came in from that 40 minutes. So I dropped the whole 40 minutes, and then I did a record scratch, and then I just put in a little bit of future Mike to explain why the episode ended so abruptly and that we'd pick it up in a couple of weeks. Austin Delaney listened to that 40 minutes and said, great guy with 3 exclamation marks. Back to Mark Daly. Just kidding. 3 exclamation marks. Loved being in court with him. What are your memories of working alongside Austin Delaney at the Competitor?
Great memories with Austin. And that was Austin was at CFTO, in case there's maybe one person in the world that may not know that. CFTO and City TV, we were, quote, the competitors. And it was back in the day, there was the 4 of us. When I say us, I'm talking about the stations, right? City Pulse, CFTO, Global, and CBC. And when your stories went on at night, you'd be looking at the 3 monitors. You only had 3 monitors that you had to look at, and that was, well, what did CFTO get? What did CBC? Do we have everything? Is everything there? That was what we did. And when you're out on the street, that's when you meet the other reporters. And back in that day, if you ever talked about another news station, you never mentioned anything on the air. You never say, oh, well, City TV I would never go on and say, CFTO said today. I mean, you just didn't do those things.
Right.
But while the powers to be at the stations were very, very concerned about all of that, as reporters out on the street, we were friends with everybody. And I met Austin back in the day. I think I was out there first before him. I'm sure I'm older than he is, but it was just one of those great times. And Austin and I had a great moment together. And if I ever got to talk to Austin about it again, is when we were out waiting for police to come. There was I don't know what it was, what crime scene it was. We're all out there, and we used to get teased at City Pulse News that we had to always walk when we talked, right? Didn't stand in front of a building.
Kinetic motion. This is like a Moses
thing.
Right?
Yeah, just keep moving. So if I was in front of if I ever stood and just pointed to a building behind me, that could be problems when that story went to air. So we always walked and talked, and there was, and I was teasing and Austin, and he was teasing me, and I said, listen, I'm going to teach you how to walk and talk. And we did that, and we had fun with it out there. But somehow it made. Do you remember a guy at the Toronto Sun, Gary Dunford?
Of course,
yeah.
I correspond via email with Dumph.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he listens to this pro. He might be listening right now.
All right. Well, I am certain, and I think he was page 6.
That's it.
Right? Was it page 6? Yeah. And I think it made it into. What was going on in that scene when City Pulse reporter Lorne Honickman was trying to show CTV reporter how to walk in. Anyway, we thought it was funny, but I think that the people we worked for didn't think it was very funny because, you don't start teaching the competition, quote unquote. But anyway, that's just one little thing that I hope Austin would remember. But we spent a lot of time on the street together. Great guy. When he retired, if I was on social media, I would have gone out there immediately, and I would have just written stuff about Austin. And he was one of the, he came from my era, so I'm a little prejudiced that way. But he was just a wonderful guy, and actually a really solid reporter.
This is your social media, Lorne Honickman. You don't need to be on Facebook or Instagram. You just have to drop by the basement once in a while.
Right.
So okay. Austin, you mentioned his retirement. He came over for his exit interview. We talked about his entire career. Yeah, it was amazing. You got to listen to Austin Delaney on Toronto Mike. But here's what I've done this for a while now, and I've done 1,600 episodes. So what really gets me excited now is pairing people up. So it's possible we could have a future episode of Toronto Mike with Austin Delaney and Lorne Honickman.
Wow. I think for the people listening, I'd be very excited. Well, even for Austin, but yeah. No, I would.
I can make that happen. Like,
Okay.
I will do my best anyways. But that's not the only note that came in since the 40 minutes, and we have a lot of
Okay.
ground to get to. That's why you're back. But Paul Stockton wrote in and said, Paul wrote, when you have Lorne Honickman on, please ask him what Howard's up to these days. I worked for him for many, many years. And he doesn't mean Humble Howard,
No,
my
he
last
doesn't. He
guest.
means Howard Honickman. He means my brother. That's funny. Paul Stockton. I have to remember that name because I'm going to see my brother Howard in a few weeks.
Well, I recorded it, so you can just revisit the tapes.
Howard's doing well. He's been retired a long time. He's living the life in a lot of ways. He's battled a few health issues, and he's done very well that way. So I will certainly say hi to my brother from Paul Stockton. I'll remember that name.
Amazing. Al Grego wrote in. He listened to the 40 minutes, and it made him want to watch the Christine Jessup story, which is streaming on Crave. And we did dive into it during that 40 minutes, but I will follow up shortly with some questions I never got to. But this is what Al wrote. I finished the Christine Jessup story the other day. It was really well made. Lorne was all over it. He just points out, Queensville is literally the next town over for me. I drive through it every day. So that Christine Jessup tragic story struck home for Al because he lives like Holland's Landing or something like that.
Now, were you able to, because I didn't listen to what you were able to say from our first interview, so did you have, obviously you touched upon it, and I know we went into it. That's a 3-part Crave special I was asked to be in back in November, where it's examining the entire story, the Christine Jessup murder, right through from the time that she gets abducted and missing in 1984, right to 1998, when there was the Kaufman Commission that looked into the whole issue of the arrest and an wrongful conviction of Guy Paul Morin in that murder and what happened afterwards. So it was an interesting thing for me to be in. And one of the reasons that for me that I said, yes, I will do it, is that it was one of those stories that I got involved in from the beginning to the end. And the end being in 98. I wasn't part of any story back in 2020 when they finally identified who the real killer was. But it certainly was a story that from the time that Christine Jessup went missing right until 98, when I came back after law school and I was covering courts for City Pulse News at that time. And you know what, Mike, it was interesting when I talked to you about it, and afterwards I've spoken to a lot of people who have said, hey, I just saw that story. Wow, Lorne, yeah. And you and I were talking. I think this is when we lost...
Remember, nothing we said on the mics was lost because I recovered everything.
Right, no, you recovered. Okay, so when we were talking, and I was talking about how covering those stories for me back then were so significant because I had young kids, and it always, I know a lot of people who work in the business, you got to separate yourself. You got to just, it's almost like you've got to put a shield around what you're doing. But for me back then, because it was covering one story after another, you and I talked about that. Every summer there seemed to be a kid missing. And one thing that I didn't even mention to you that I remembered after I left that I had covered before the Christine Jessup story was the deaths at the hospital for sick children. When those babies, they said, were murdered, Susan Nellis was charged. She was exonerated. They had what was called the Grange Commission to look into all that. And I covered that entire story. So it was one thing after another dealing with kids. And it was, for me back then, and I talked about this with you, with my kids being so little, it had a great effect on me. I wasn't able to, as I know a lot of my colleagues did, was able to just sort of totally separate it. A lot of it came into me, but I was happy to participate, and I'm glad the producers did as good of a job as they did with that, because it tells really a tragic story, and it's really the story of what happened to Ken Jessup. And of course, I know some people have said, and I've heard this, Mike, where they said, oh, geez, Lorne, I wish you would have talked more about Guy Paul Morin as well, and the effect that had 100%. I mean, that's another story within the story these producers were focusing on what happened to the Jessup family, but it doesn't minimize anything about what happened to Guy Paul Moran with respect to being wrongfully charged and wrongfully convicted.
No, absolutely. And the reason this is so compelling is, one, you're all over it and you did a great job. And I did pump your tires during that 40 minutes. People go back and hear those tires being pumped. But you know, I mean, Christine's brother is obviously featured strongly, as he should be. But you're like the narrator of this 3-part docu-series that's on Crave right now. You're basically the voice that kind of guides us through, because there's so many twists and turns. Like, for example, the fact that Guy Paul Moran, who, spoiler alert, was wrongfully convicted of murdering Christine Jessup, but he was originally found not guilty.
Right.
Like, and then they rearrest him and they try him, and then after 5 days of deliberation, the jury finds him guilty. Like, there's so many twists and turns in the story.
Yeah, huge. There's so many parts of it. That's right. Yeah. He was originally found not guilty. The Court of Appeal overturned the acquittal. They ordered the new trial, and then he gets one thing I will always remember, Mike, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, is I do remember saying to you that was the last trial I covered before I started law school. I had started law school about 3 weeks later. Right. And I will always remember Jack Pinkowski was the lawyer for Guy Paul Moran. And Jack Pinkowski at that time was very, very well known, unbelievable lawyer. I mean, a tireless advocate. He's one of those people, and he was like a piranha, and his cross-examinations were like, I can remember him to this day. When Guy Paul was convicted, I went back into the courtroom. We had all the scrums. Everything took place. Everybody sort of wrapping up, getting their stuff, coming out. And he sees me. I see him. He knew I was starting law school. He came up to me. I could see that his eyes, that he had been crying. I could see that. And he knew I was starting law school. And he said, when you become a lawyer, don't ever, ever get too close to your clients, because things like this are just too hard to cope with. Something along those lines. Wow. And it was something I'll never forget, obviously. It was one of those trials and one of those situations where you say to yourself, what did I just see there? By the way, that trial of Guy Paul Moran's took place right after the trial of Robert Boltovich, another person who ended up being exonerated as being found not to have committed the murder of Elizabeth Bain. I don't know if everybody remembers that story.
I can still see that photo they would run in the paper of Elizabeth Bain.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had covered that. Just before that, Jack Pinkowski, I had covered a story, a trial of his, gavel to gavel. Some people may remember Julie Bowers. She was a woman up in Kincardine who was accused of leaving her 10-month-old baby Justin Bowers in the snow, and that trial was moved to Toronto, and she was acquitted. And a lot of people felt, that may have been a, quote, wrongful acquittal. Those trials back then that I was involved in, we had a responsibility. I'm happy to talk about this with you a little later or whenever you want to talk about it. The problem with when you're watching court reporting right today as it was back then, the people that I used to cover trials with, who were much better than me. I mean, the Kirk Makins, Christy Blatchford. Right. These are people that I have and had tremendous amount of respect for. I've got a lot of problems right now, the way legal issues are covered, and we can talk about that.
That's would you mind elaborating a little right now while we're on the subject?
Well,
there's a lot of ground I want to cover with you, but we're going to do this.
One of the problems with covering courts or covering legal stories is that they're not as easy as, perhaps, when I put easy in quotes, to ensure that there's an understanding of what's going on. It's not there. It's to sit in a courtroom, for example, for 6 hours and to come out, if you're doing a television report, and to be able to get that 90 seconds and be able to, so people, it's not easy. You have to really work at it, and you have to, and in order to understand it, you have to understand what's actually going on for you to be able to report it. And it's, and I cast no aspersions. I mean, not everybody goes to law school to become a lawyer so you can cover courts or whatever. But before I even went to law school, one of the things that ended up happening for me was, because I was in the courts all the time, you're learning by osmosis. You're watching the lawyers, you're talking, and you're trying to understand what the important part of it is. Today, when I see or read what's happening, a lot of times, and especially if I'm listening to talk radio, if I happen to be listening, and people are saying, "Oh, well, this happened," I saw a lot of it. For example, Mike, during the trial of the 5 hockey players in London. Sexual assault trials are really complicated trials. But for the public, it's almost like, well, who do you believe? It's a he said, she said, who. So who are you going to believe? Is the judge going to believe the players? Is the judge going to believe the complainant? It's not that easy. It's much more complicated than that. It's not a credibility battle between the two, but that's how it comes upon. So a lot of people, and I heard this happening, for example, with the Michael Thompson trial, Counselor Thompson, that he just got acquitted. I heard people talk, oh, well, yeah, his trial took so long. Oh, it was in all different places. Oh, wow, he was, and oh, the woman said this, but when I ever get asked, Mike, to come on now to talk about a case, I'll always say, I wasn't in the courtroom. I wasn't there, so I don't know. I'll always urge people to read judgments. If a court comes out with a judgment, in a 50-page judgment, I'll always say to people, get it online, read it. It might be a lot of legalese in there. That's where I think the reporting is failing in a lot of ways, is that people are not, the people who are reporting may not understand all the nuances. And you may say, well, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know all the, but in a lot of times, to me, and again, I'm speaking, this is my opinion, that's where we're falling below the line. Now, there's some real good, let me be very clear here, just so I'm not casting aspersions on all court reporting right now. Betsy Powell, the Toronto Star, for example, she's been doing it. She's good. That's somebody who, if she's reporting from the court, I know there's a level of credibility there for me. Same with Michelle Mandel, who's been doing it for a while at the Toronto Sun, or a long time. She's been reporting from the courts and legal stories. So, but if I turn on the TV and I see somebody and they'll go, let's go to John Doe, who's in London right now, and I'll listen and I'll say, okay, I'm sure I'm missing something here, or something else happened, or whatever. When you and I put together Judgment Day, when I was doing those podcasts for you for that short period of time, one of the reasons I wanted to do it at that time was because I said to myself, maybe I can help that way. Maybe I can sort of make people understand a little more, because it's not, and again, not everybody can go and get a legal education and then cover courts. It's not an easy thing to do, but we're not getting, in my opinion, the level of reporting that we need to get on all these legal issues. And it's just one of many things that I'm concerned about when I look and I say, it's the public understanding what just happened here.
Now, your perspective on this is very valuable, because you are unique in that you were an excellent broadcast, dare I say. I was watching. I do miss the mustache, but I think I won't dwell on that for 6 minutes. But you're an excellent broadcaster who became a lawyer. So you have the two sides. You have the broadcasting acumen, but you know the law. You're a lawyer. So there aren't a lot of Lorne Honickmans out there, and I don't think this is me wondering aloud whether they want to pay what it would cost to get a Lorne Honickman to cover these trials.
Well, nobody is, I can tell you this, the phone, can I still say the phone's not ringing?
Yeah, it's a mobile phone.
Yeah, the mobile phone.
Hopefully it's not a landline.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. The mobile phone's not ringing. The emails aren't coming in from anywhere. They're saying, hey, listen, we need a 70 or 71-year-old white male to come on our TV station right now to talk about legal issues. So I haven't had that call.
Well, I don't know why the age would matter. I would think that the 71 would be working in your advantage because
really?
you've seen some shit, Lorne. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you've been there. You were covering the Christine Jessup case.
Yeah, no, I get you. You know, you're blowing through an open door, as the expression goes. But I'm
going to ask you more about. I want to wrap up our discussion on this 3-part Christine Jessup story that is airing on Crave right now.
I would urge people to watch it, not because I'm in it, but but I think that it's a really good. It was made very very well by the people who put it together, and it's an important story here in Ontario, in Canada, and it's a really sad story. So
well, there's 2 tragedies in this story, right? You got a young girl who is murdered. That's as sad as it gets. But you have a man, Guy Paul Morin, they take so much of his life away from him.
Right.
I wrote down a note, guilty for being weird.
Yeah, and what you see, that's right, Mike. And one of the underlying issues in the entire story is the police investigation, and you put investigation in quotes. It wasn't a good investigation. When you watch this, it reminds you of all the things that happened that they did and that they didn't do, and what they could have done that they didn't do. And you see what happened to Ken Jessup. And Ken Jessup lost his mom, his dad, his sister. He's having to live through all of that, and there's a lot of layers there, and it's you're absolutely correct. And I think that the Guy Paul Morin story should be done if it hasn't been done yet. And by the way, I mentioned his name, Kirk Macon. Kirk Macon, who I haven't seen or talked to in a long time, who was Globe and Mail reporter. I think the best legal justice reporter the country has ever had. Wow. That's my opinion. He wrote the book on this case called Redrum the Innocent, because those are the words that quote an undercover, not undercover officer, an informant in the jail said that's what Guy Paul had said. That's murder spelled backwards, Redrum.
Cool.
But I'm hopeful one day maybe we'll see him and others in the story about Guy Paul Morin.
Everyone who saw The Shining knows that red rum is murder backwards.
Okay.
Have you seen The Shining?
Yes, of course.
Just making sure. Hey, so just one last note I wanted to ask you about. Ken Jessup spoke to this, but he talked about the brainwashing that he received from police, in that until the DNA evidence basically showed that it wasn't Guy Paul Morin. We found the DNA evidence that it was not Guy Paul Morin. Until that, Ken Jessup still believed, even when he was what's that, exonerated? What's the term when you're
yes.
free? He still believed Guy Paul Morin murdered his sister because of the intense brainwashing he spoke about receiving from the police. The police, I mean, hopefully, I talked about learning, like when your hard drive, make sure your hard drive has space or you're going to lose valuable content. I learned a valuable lesson. I hope the police learned a lesson from this.
Well, I think what came out of this, and that's why they had the Kaufman Commission.
Right.
The idea of that commission was he made numerous recommendations going forward that I think many police forces have incorporated now. So that's one of the good things that comes out of such a tragic type situation, when you can go back and take the microscope and look at it. Same thing happened at the Grange Commission that I talked about earlier, that looked at the deaths at the hospital for sick children and looked at the police investigation at that time as to why they charged a nurse so quickly. So when you have these public inquiries, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anything better, but it gets you some answers, and it gets you recommendations to do what you just said, Mike, to hopefully not commit the same errors going forward.
So I mentioned, even though it's only been 2 weeks, I received several emails about your episode. Like, maybe the trick is 40-minute episodes. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like, I should cut off all my guests at 40 minutes and say, if you want more, come back.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the trick, right? I would never do that, by the way. But Austin Delaney, Paul Stockton, Al Grego, there were a couple more. Tyler Campbell wrote in, and Tyler wrote, more of a comment than a question for Lorne. I thought he was bang on when he said, he quotes you, "To the best of my ears ability, it sounds a little like Mark Daly." I totally agree with him. So again, I'm going to this won't be long. Won't be 6 minutes. It'll be far less.
No,
It's going to be 1 minute. 1 minute.
You're going to play this again.
No, not
so
going to. I'm going to play something different.
Okay. All right. No, okay, just a minute. Before you do anything.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to.
You're walking out.
No.
Lorne, it's walking out.
No, I'm going to do what you never experienced in your life. We're going to pretend we're in a courtroom right now. And I'm going to say, Your Honor, I understand that my friend, notwithstanding my objection, is going to be going back to an area that I objected to. I just want the record to be clear that I'm not happy with this and I'm objecting to this. I just think the record should be clear.
That was cool. I like that you did that. So I'm not going to play what I played last time because I got another final email. I'll read it. Well, I won't read it. I'm going to just summarize it for you. It came from the aforementioned Al McCormick. So remind the listenership how you know Al McCormick.
Well, Al is one of my closest friends. Al and I, when I started at City TV, he was a cameraman who was working there at the time. We became friends. And he and his wife, Mara, and my wife, Kathy, have been very, very close friends from that day on and up until this moment. Just spoke to Al last week. So when I heard that he was... that when he told me that he had heard the episode that I thought was gone,
yeah.
I said,
"How did you hear that? Did you hack into Mike's MacBook Pro?"
No, he just told me, and anyway, so he said,
I love that you think this episode was gone because when you left, it was gone, and I said we'll just do it again in a couple of weeks, right? But the fact that I didn't tell you, I resurrected it, I released it into the wilds.
Okay.
So, but. Essentially, in a nutshell, Al McCormick, would you say, Lorne Honickman, that Al McCormick was friendly with Mark Daly from City TV?
No, of course. Just a minute. Can I help here?
So Al McCormick, an 11-second clip.
Al McCormick heard the clip, put it through, and agrees with you that it is Mark Daly. Okay?
Well, Al McCormick, somebody who worked with, you can concur, he worked with Mark Daly. He used some AI processing to... basically, in the mix, raise the vocals. This is, again, Russia's Subdivision.
Okay, I'll be back.
It's only 11 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Al McCormick, not Al Grego. That was a different email. Al McCormick sent me this 11 seconds, so I will play it for Al and for the listeners and for you, Lorne. Here it is.
Okay.
Subdivision. In the high school halls, in the shopping malls, conform or be cast out. Subdivision. In the basement bars.
So now listening where the vocals are in the mix are elevated and the music is down. So you can hear the vocals better. One more time.
Subdivision. In the high school halls, in the shopping malls, conform or be cast out. Subdivision. In the basement bars.
We'll leave this topic once and for all, Lorne Honickman. We have so much ground to cover. But now that you heard that AI version that Al McCormick sent me, beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening. I was just answering some. Are you finished on the Subdivision stuff?
We're done. But beyond a reasonable doubt,
sorry,
that's a sample of Mark Daly, right?
Okay. Oh, I was just treating this like you were doing a commercial, and I was just going to say, are we back?
Do you agree?
Now
we're moving on now.
Okay, let's move on.
You agree? Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Gee,
we're not in court, by the way.
Okay, Mike.
Okay. Lauren's getting angry. We're moving on. We're moving on.
We're good.
Lorne, serious time. Did you hear the sad news? I shared it during the Humble Howard episode, which was only a couple of days ago on Tuesday, that Mike Stafford's wife, Jody Stafford, has passed away from cancer. Have you heard that news?
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry to give you this bad news.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And if Mike is listening or will be listening, my deepest condolences. So sorry to hear that.
Lest we forget that I think it was the first time Mike Stafford came over after he was fired by Chorus and lost his 640 morning show gig. You heard that episode, and you actually, a friend of yours or some lawyer you're acquainted to, you were able to get this lawyer to take on this on contingency. So
no, I just
can you remind me the details?
Just the details were very simple. I wasn't trying to help Mike file lawsuits or do anything. My concern for Mike was I heard him talking with you about the fact that he was considering taking legal action, I thought to myself, Mike probably has no idea that there's a 2-year limitation period on all lawsuits, that if he's actually going to do anything, he's going to have to do it within 2 years. So that's the information that I got to him. And then obviously I wasn't going to be able to act for him. And I was able to find a lawyer that I had worked with earlier. And I just said, hey, listen, maybe you can help Mike out. And that was it. That's all I did. But I listened to some of your podcast with him subsequently, and I remember listening, and I don't know what the status is, and I remember hearing over and over again that things were still dragging along. So
that's the update. Things are still dragging.
Welcome to the civil.
But that's a long time. Is that typical?
Yes, unfortunately.
That's years.
I know. Unfortunately, the wheels of justice in this province, especially the civil litigation wheels, it's awful. Do you know that for lawyers like me who deal mainly on the civil side, I've done a lot of criminal work, but mainly on the civil side. If you sit down, if somebody comes in, quote unquote, into your office, or you talk to them on the phone or over Zoom, and they may have a really good case, whatever the case may be. One of the very first things I say, and I'm sure all lawyers say, is, look, if you're going to get into this process right now, it's September of 2025. You want to file a claim right now, we may go to trial in September of 2028. And they'll look at you and you go, are you serious? Yes. And that's a problem. And we have a huge, huge problem. And there are great people right now trying to do something about it. Judges, lawyers. But so far, even though things are starting to maybe get a little better, that's the problem. And people, you can be inside a lawsuit, Mike, and once you're there, you feel like you can never get out, and that's a problem. So I'm not surprised to hear, by the way, that Mike's updates to you are that nothing has happened yet.
Mike's financial his personal life, of course, is devastating right now because he was in Lindsay, Ontario, to be with Jody when she passed. It only happened early. I think it was Monday. So, but financially, I've had conversations lately with Mike, and financially, the situation is dire. Like, he needed to get to Lindsay, and he took an Uber, believe it or not, from Toronto to Lindsay because he didn't have a car, and like, he's basically completely broke. He does have shelter right now. He's living with his sister, but it's just a shame that we can't get some resolution there, because Mike believes that after 25 years of service at Chorus, he was entitled to some severance, and this is ongoing, and it's been a long time. So it sounds like that's situation normal.
Wish Mike all the best. Wish him the best.
But I do want to ask you something about your relationship with 640, which is a Chorus station. In that, do you think, Lorne Honickman, you're on the stand right now?
Oh boy.
In your opinion, do you think being involved in any way, even though you weren't trying to help Mike, but the fact that you in any way tipped Mike off to the fact there was a 2-year, because he didn't know about that 2-year deadline to file something, and then it happened, do you think that has hurt your chances to do any radio work at AM 640?
You know what? I have no idea. That's
hostile witness.
No, I don't know. I get asked. I get on. Alex Pearson asked me to come on once in a while. I've been asked to. I've done different shows there, so I'll get asked to come on. As far as global television, I get asked. I was asked several times. So I don't. Okay. You know what? You're
not blacklisted.
No. I think. Look at. Let me just tell you about my time at 640. It was. I had a great time. I was. For those who may not know, from 2010 to 2017, I was Oakley's fill-in host when he was doing the morning show from 6 to 10, and I'd fill in the afternoon when Bill Carroll was there. There were some days I would be on Oakley, and then I'd come back later in the day, and it was a crazy time, because what was happening is if I did Oakley's show and the show was 6 to 10, I'd come in at around 4:30, do the show, finish at 10, and then head to my office to practice law all day, and I would do that for for the week or 2 weeks that Oakley was away. But it was a great time for me, and I will say this. Anybody who knows me knows that maybe they would disagree. Maybe they'd say, no, Lorne just said something now and it's totally false. I'm not the greatest self-advocate, a self-marketer. I'm one of the, a lot of people can go out there and they pat themselves on the back all the time or whatever. People who know me really well will say, Lorne, you shouldn't be so, you should give yourself credit for some. So I'm going to do this with respect to my time as a fill-in host. When I did the Oakley show, and I did it with Jimmy Cochon, who I don't know if anybody out there knows that name. I hope they do. He was the board op at AM 640. I believe one of the most talented guys I had ever met. And I did shows with him. I will say this, Mike, that if anybody found air checks of those shows, I put that up to any talk radio stuff. Not every show, obviously, but many of the shows. We did 4 hours. I remember a senior chorus official, I think his name was Chris Pandoff at the time, coming down after one of my shows and saying, that was unbelievable. You did funny, you did serious, this and that. But one of the things that I did, because I thought that I had to do it, was because it was talk radio. I opened the phone lines. I'd get the phones from beginning to end just jammed. Let's go to Mike in Toronto. Mike, what do you think? Let's go to Susan in Scarborough. Susan, what do you think? So when I compare what I was doing to what I hear now on talk radio, I say, okay, all right, here we go. Host is going to, pontificate for 5 to 7 minutes on a subject. All right, well, maybe we'll take a few calls. I've heard that once in a while. All right, let me bring in this expert. All right, we've been talking about what happened right now, like with Jimmy Kimmel being let go, his show being canceled for indefinitely. Let's go. I'm going to bring on, Jane Doe, who's a media expert from and do my 5 to 7 minute interview or whatever. Gary Bell was a board op, the spaceman they called him. Sure. I guess people who are in radio will know him. He was on CFTR before that. Right. He called me the Call King. So, and he'd say, "Oh, the Call King's here. Here's the Call King," and I was proud of that. For me, it was like, isn't that what I'm doing? The soundtrack of Toronto. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to come in there. One time, Mike, one show that I did was through the ice storm. When was that? 2013. Chorus back then was not known for coming on at times that things weren't really supposed to happen. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, if you don't bring somebody in because there's a breaking news story. Right. I was used to that in television.
Well, you're from City TV where you were everywhere.
Right. But when that ice storm was there and I had people listening on transistor radios or whatever, and we were doing, all right, I got Mary who's in an apartment in Etobicoke. Mary can't, thank you, Lorne. I'm here. I can't get down and what, all right. Well, just stay where you are, Mary. Our producer is going to try and get, we're going to try and get Toronto Fire to come help you there. Those are the types of things I do. Now, the shows that I did with Jimmy Cochon, I mean, I don't know where Jimmy is now. If somebody said, Mike, you know what, Lorne? Can we get you? We've located Jimmy, and can we put you and Jimmy together? Do a show together or whatever. I do that literally in a heartbeat. That's the type of stuff, because I believe that for me, and again, this is my opinion, like when talk radio for me back then, Oakley used to do, now I don't get to hear him in the afternoon now because I'm not around at, 3 to 6 when he's on now. So I don't know, to me, he was unbelievable at what he did. And I'm certain he still is. I know he took lots of callers as well. But that to me is something that I love to do. And people used to hate, people say, what, aren't you sick of those, like Jim in North York, like, who will come on, he'll give you sort of the right side. And then you brought Sally from Sky. She's always sort of on the left side. And I said, well, no, that's what's great thing about it. Just let people go. That's what they need. That's the purpose. Now, I'm sure everybody out there who does talk radio right now would say, well, Honickman has no idea what he's talking about. That's not what talk radio is. That's not what it is. Talk radio is it's views. Let's get them on. Let's get the panels on. Let's do that and whatever. And it's okay. And if it's entertaining, I suppose that's okay. But is it informative? Is that really what it is? And what's my cred? What's that credibility? You said before, Mike, you said, well, Lorne, you bring that, when covering courts, I mean, you got that interesting combination, broadcaster, lawyer, or whatever. What I was hoping that combination gave me is the credentials and credibility, the 2 C's. That's all. So if I came out and I'm doing something, somebody's saying, oh, okay, he's coming from a certain place of credibility, but he's allowing this person to speak or allowing that person to speak, and we're getting some sort of why am I listening to this? Am I listening to it because I just want to hear what Honickman has to say, or am I listening to it because I get to hear all these people talking? So anyway, I don't think 2017 was when I was last asked to guest host on any chorus radio show. I've never been asked since then. And you started this whole discussion by asking me, do I think it's because of a tip-off that I gave to Mike Stafford about a limitation period? I don't think so. I hope not, but I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it really is just, you know what? Got tired of Honickman or whatever.
But got tired of everybody, right? Because you're not alone. I mean, Peter Sherman, for example.
Another guy. I mean, he was, for me, that getting rid of him or not allowing him on was also made no sense from a credibility point of view. Listening to Peter, I say to myself, there was a guy again, and somebody may be listening to this and say, Mike, well, this is just an old fart. One old fart saying, yeah, then another old fart should have been on and whatever. No, it's nothing. It has nothing to do, about that at all. It's like if I'm listening to somebody and somebody's telling me something and somebody's giving me their opinion, and if they're not going to calls and they're not taking it, but they're actually giving me 5 minutes of what they think is something, well, what's the reason I'm listening to it? Why am I listening? Is it just because, oh, that's interesting? Or is it because, am I learning anything? Am I getting proper information? And how do I mean, we can get into misinformation soon if you want. I mean, that to me is a much bigger problem than whether talk radio is doing what it should be doing. But I would, for me, if I ever went back into talk radio, if somebody said, hey, Lorne, yeah, come on back, let's do talk radio. This is the format. You get on, we're going to talk. You talk for 5 to 7 minutes. You bring somebody on, we'll do it. I'd be going, can I take calls? Oh, no, we don't. We do. No, we do. What we ask is for people to text, and you can read some of their text. Oh, okay. Maybe I don't want to do this. I'd much rather just say, hey, everybody, it's Honickman. Let's go. Let's talk. Here we are.
Do you think that the demise of these live calls is because there's nobody calling?
Well, if you tell me,
how many people are actually listening, and how many people listening are going to call in 2025?
Well, so that's really a great question. That with this person who has no, as we said earlier, social media,
right? Yeah, it's frustrating when I drop your episodes. I can't tag you anywhere.
Exactly. So, but maybe you're right. Maybe nobody's listening, and because nobody's listening, however, if there is so here's how I would respond to that. If nobody's listening, so maybe there's nobody out there to call. If that's the reason, then obviously you can't force the calls. You can't make the calls, etc. I would hazard a guess. I have no expertise in this, but so I'll hazard a guess that if the word it sort of got out and it was understood that this is the place that you could call. This is the place that was soliciting your opinion. So instead of maybe sitting on your computer and just scrolling through, X, maybe, all right, you know what? Maybe I'll do what I did 5 years ago. Maybe I'll go back and turn on AM radio. I haven't listened to AM radio in a long time, but I understand that this is what's going on. I don't know, Mike.
Well, let me share an experience I had only 3 weeks ago. I used to work at the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition. I worked 3 years there as a teenager, and I blogged about this at torontomike.com. So a producer of Ontario Today, which is a Ontario show, obviously, that airs on CBC Radio 1 at noon. So it's like, and they take calls live. And I received an email from a producer there that said, "We love what you wrote. Would you be the first caller?" Okay, so it's basically telling me to be the first caller. And I nicely said, "Oh, I would do this. I'll talk about the X with CBC." But
Yes.
I'm chatting with Sophie B. Hawkins at that time, because I had Sophie B. Hawkins scheduled to do a Toronto Mike episode at that very time. So I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm not available at noon." And you know what they said to me? "That's okay. Let's do it at 11 o'clock." Okay. So they basically set it up where they phoned me at 11 a.m.
Right.
to be the first caller at 12:05. Okay. So you're with me here?
Yes.
So one thing is, so obviously I'm not a caller. I didn't call. And I'm also not live because it was recorded at 11 a.m. with the host. But also, they did edit what I said. Like, so I said stuff. I think I sang "Let's Go to the XO, Baby." Like some wonderful stuff I did.
You did that?
I did that. But that was edited out, so it never made it. But so they edited it, and they really did make it seem like I was the first caller at 12:05. So it made me wonder, because I've never worked in radio
See,
like you.
I don't like that.
But it made me wonder, maybe this is how it is now. Like maybe these live callers that you're talking about, they're pre-arranged and pre-recorded.
Well, I shouldn't do that.
Or at least scheduled. Like, hey, will you please call us at this time? You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to just saying, hey, lines are open, call in, here's the number. I have a feeling the reason that they did it the way they did it with me, and by the way, that's CBC, okay? Love it or hate it, a lot of people are probably listening at noon to CBC radio across this province, the entire province. So there probably are people listening. But I have a feeling in 2025, literally maybe nobody is calling. I'm not saying nobody's listening, but nobody's calling.
Well, nobody's calling because are they ramping it up? Are they asking for the calls? I mean, I'll listen. I wake up listening to talk radio. That's how our radio goes off in the morning.
What station?
640.
Okay.
I've got 640 on. I have it on. I'll listen. So I'll wake up with listening to Brady in the morning for a short time until I'm out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, now maybe it's later in the morning during his show. So, but in the time that I'm listening, which will be from about 5:45 till about 7:30,
Okay.
I don't hear a caller. I don't know if he's going. I don't know if he takes it after. I have no idea. But that's for me, when I would start at 6 o'clock in the morning, when I'm sitting in for Oakley, and you're saying to yourself, so I'll come on. I remember the way it worked, Mike. I come on, good morning, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Jimmy and I would sort of go back and forth a bit. What's going on here today? And, it's like this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. And did you hear what happened last night? And by 6:07, I'm already open up the phone lines, right? So, but what I did know, what I came to learn was, at that time in the morning, who's waking up? Who's going to call? No, it's going to be somebody on the road. So maybe it's going to be truckers out there. Right. So we would say, and this was where Jimmy's great expertise came in. Jimmy would say, no, let's talk about, like if something we know that whoever's listening at this time. And you know what? Would there be times, Mike, where I'd go, all right, so call me, and I can do the numbers, Mike, right now. 870-6400, star 640 on cell. What do you think? Right? Should potholes all be filled before a new highway is built? And you go, wow. Like when you think back, but that probably was a topic at one point, right? Or
I can hear that being a topic.
Whatever it was, but you would get, so using today again as an example,
Yeah.
using today again as an example, because I know everybody's talking about Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. And I know they're coming from it from all sides. I understand. That would be, if I was doing talk radio this morning in the way that I like to do talk radio, if I was driving in a course, I'd be going, oh, wow, this, all right, 6:10, I'm going to get the phones lit up, and I'll get them lit up. And all right, so here's what I think right now, everyone. Here's what I think. I think that this is a matter of Jimmy Kimmel being canceled. This is the latest cancel culture that we have. Now it's coming from an opposite. 870-6400. I shouldn't be giving courses numbers out here. I'm just doing it because I remember that's what I used to do.
No, it's fine. I like it.
Anyway, but that's what I used to, and I would know, like, I'd get the phones. And the great thing also, Mike, about getting the public is, yeah, of course you're getting lots of, quote, uninformed opinion, but what it is, it's opinion that goes beyond the experts, goes beyond me. It's because that's what so
You're taking the temperature.
that's what I liked. You're taking the temperature. What is it out there? And if you're listening to somebody and somebody's like just going off the rails, somebody's saying improper, my job was,
theorists.
yeah, somebody's going, oh yeah, this is just because, blah, 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 this was a deal that was worked out behind the scenes. And, okay, how do you know that? So you would challenge a caller. You would do that, but at least I'd be saying to myself, well, there's a good reason for it. When I did legal briefs on City TV, and that was CP24 for those 10 years, and that was my legal show that I did once a week, and it was talk TV, right? We'd open up the phone lines, and I'd be looking into the camera. I'd have a guest. Maybe I had somebody on. We're talking about a big legal issue. Let's go to the phones. I'm looking into the camera. Let's go to Mike in Etobicoke. Mike, it was exactly the same thing. And you would just hear Mike's voice. So, but people like that. And I think there's a reason that you liked it, that even though you're listening to just everyday people, that's really the important discussion for me. That's the discussion that I'm sure other people out there right now would say, Lorne, you're crazy. Like, you get the wackos, and if you open up the phone, like, why do you want to hear all of that? Well, because you're giving people that opportunity to be able to at least express themselves. And I would think, or I would argue, that that's really a great purpose of what talk radio can do.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the greats like Mark Hebscher, Bob McCowan, how they would handle the crazies was part of the entertainment.
It was. If you get somebody who'd come on, you just would learn how to handle that. That was a skill that I learned from listening to the Oakleys of the world and the Mark Hebschers and all of those people who knew how to do that, and what I learned from doing it through television. So I would, to me, that, and maybe again, somebody would say, Lorne, all you're doing right now is solidifying my opinion of you as a guy from an era long gone by. That's not what what you should be doing. You should be thinking about getting into the world today. Get on social media. Let's start doing what start interacting there. That's where it's at. It's not getting on radio and going, let's go to Joe in Scarborough. Nobody cares about what Joe in Scarborough has. That's what I'm sure the pushback would be, and saying you don't know what it is. But if somebody were to say to me, Lorne, I'd love to hear you on talk radio, quote unquote, because I'd love to hear what you have to say about things, I'd say, okay, well, sure, thanks. Obviously, as a host, you've got to have, again, do you have the credibility? Do you have the credentials? Do you have the credibility? If you have those two, that's good, but that doesn't mean you just have to listen to me, or you just have to listen to my guest, or you just have to listen to my panel. If I have a panel on, if I did a panel, Mike, I'd want to go to the phones. So what do you think? Do you think that you think Toronto Mike is right about that, or do you think his old buddy Mark Hebscher is right about it? What do you think? See,
that's a radio program I'd listen to. But I hearing you describe, people may want to hear Lorne Honickman's take on the Jimmy Kimmel thing, for example. But I'm thinking, oh, that's a podcast. That's what I'm sitting here thinking. I'm like,
well, no, that's because and I understand everything to you is a podcast because you to your credit, and this is nothing disparaging about Toronto Mike. With what you do, you've monetized your life and what you love doing, and good for you. And it's good on you. And I have tremendous amount of respect. I've talked about you to people, but people who do podcasts, as you will agree, there's so many out there. Are there tens of thousands? Am I right about that right now?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And out of those tens of thousands, how many are monetized? How many are making money? I don't know if you have the figures. You may know those figures, but it's a difficult thing to do. And if somebody were to say, I'm going to have a podcast, for me, when I did it with you, when we did Judgment Day, I didn't stop doing Judgment Day with you, Mike, because I said, oh, I'm not making money. Oh, look at that. We do Judgment Day. I got 51 views on that. I had to stop it simply because of my own scheduling, and I just didn't have time for it. I enjoyed doing it, but for me, there are people out there that want to do a podcast, or there's 1,000 podcasters, and you go, okay, well, why am I going to listen to this person? So why is somebody going to listen to Honickman? Why is somebody going to listen?
Well, I've already told you the answer, which is you have the unique blend of broadcaster skill and legal knowledge as a lawyer. Like I'm saying there's not tens of thousands of Lorne Honickmans. And also views on YouTube, I would just point out that that's standalone, completely separate from the podcast.
Right.
But I realize now that 40 minutes cutoff, we were just getting started here, because one thing I want to say in defense of radio, that you talked about the ice storm, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, should there be something happening where electricity is down, hydro's down, and you need live information?
Yes.
There's nothing else. It's radio. You can get in your car or get a transistor radio, get some batteries in there. You can pull in a terrestrial radio signal, and get live information without requiring electricity, and that simply won't happen with a podcast.
Yeah, and I did that for 3 days in a row during the ice storm, but I didn't do it all day. I did it in the morning. I think I came in at 8 and left at noon. So, and then there was nothing on live after me. But during those times that I came in, it was incredible. It was exactly what you just said, Mike.
That's when radio shines.
To me, it was like, because I grew up in the world of breaking news and what that meant. We called them hot shots, breaking news. I was on, for example, one time I was on AM 640. They didn't have a night show after 6 o'clock. Whoever show ended at 6 back then, I can't remember who I was sitting in for. There was nothing live that came on at 6.
Like a re-roll or something, right?
Do you remember there was a story? Do you remember a GO train that got flooded?
Yep.
Got flooded. We had a massive storm. The skies opened up at about 5 o'clock, and a GO train was flooded, and people were stranded on the track. And I convinced them to let me stay on, and I did another couple of hours, and we went live, because for me, doing breaking news and going live was perfect.
But listen to yourself. You had to convince them to let you go live, right? It should be the other way around, right?
Right.
They should be trying to convince you, can you stick around a couple of hours because we want to be live during this news event?
Well, yeah, but the program director at the time was Gord Harris, and he was like, to his credit, I just said, hey, let me do this, no problem, and away we go. He was a fan. I was lucky at the time when he was there. He was the one that said, yeah, I think Lorne can do talk radio, after I came out of TV, and he gave me that opportunity. So I remember doing it. But I love that. I mean, breaking news, things are happening, boom, like.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah,
that's exciting. Now, the current PD at 640 is Mike Bendixson, and I'm told, again, I don't listen. I need to do what you do in court or whatever, but I don't listen. But I have been told that it has been veering a little further to the right in terms of the political spectrum and some of the ideas. And I wondered if you, Lorne Honickman, were going to be hosting the morning show today, and you're driving in, I don't know, it was a Chorus Key, so you're driving to Chorus Key, not far from where TMLX 20 is. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment here, because that's at Jarvis and Queens Key. But you're driving to Chorus Key, and you're thinking about your take on Jimmy Kimmel, because this is going to be the hot topic for this morning's morning show. Are you thinking, I need to align my take on Jimmy Kimmel with the political, the veering to the right that has been perceived by the station, so that I align with the viewpoints? Like, are you thinking, oh, I got to make sure I have a conservative viewpoint on this? Or is it going to be, I'm going to be Lorne Honickman, whatever I am?
What you just said, if I ever, and not me, if anybody does what you just said, I got to veer to one direction. I got to slant it, veer it. I'd be saying, turn around and go home and get another job.
But you want the paycheck.
No. But so then
there's not a lot of jobs.
No, but you can't. You can't do that. You see, do you understand what you just said is the biggest problem in news today? It is what you just spoon-fed me here right now is the biggest problem in news, because what it is that if you start with a bias, then you're going to play into the people who are listening, and that it's a phenomenon called confirmation bias.
Sure.
That's why social media has destroyed the news business. Not the business, but the important part of getting news and information out, because it doesn't happen. Because what we live in this world, and I don't have to be on social media to know this, because what it is, Mike, is that if I wake up today and use the Kimmel story as the example, okay? I wake up today and I have heard, here's the fact. The fact is Jimmy Kimmel said this. That's an uncontroverted fact. Here's the second uncontroverted fact. ABC did this. They suspended him indefinitely for, that's one fact. Fact two is, this is what he said. Now, the opinions come from the facts, on the facts. If I wake up and I hate Jimmy Kimmel, hated him all, I've hated him, let's say, throughout his career, hated everything he said about Trump, wake up in the morning and go, yes, I just heard he got fired or canceled, and I'm on social media, the only thing I'm going to be reading all day are the hundreds of articles, whatever it is, about Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm not even going to read it. A study very recently came out and has shown that people on social media, when they go to stories, they'll go over 75% will look at the headline, and that's all they need. So if you're not a fan of this politician, whatever, and you got a headline that says it could be totally made up.
You're proving my point, though, right? Because what you have now is people listening to 640 are conservative-minded, aligned to the right, and they will turn the station if you come on with some kind of, and I hate to use this term, but like a lefty spin on what's going down.
But why do you need a spin? So if I was doing this, if I said, here's what I would do, because this is what I came from. Maybe my show would be called Down the Middle. Maybe that's what it would be, because I would try to be the place that nobody ever is or can be, and that is down the middle. And what
station is this on, Lorne?
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, but if I was...
That's a podcast.
Well, sure. I mean, there would be, I mentioned earlier in the last time we were here about Steve Paikin. Yeah. We were talking about, I think he could do a show like that. If I did a show with him like that, people who have come from backgrounds, Austin, we talked about him earlier, where we were brought up having to ensure that whatever we were doing was news, not... You see, 24-hour news killed the news business in a lot of ways, because you had to feed the beast. And the only way to feed the beast was to get views, not just news. So there's your news, there's your facts, here's your views on the news. But we grow up in a society where it's right, left, them, us. Yeah. Like when
never more so than right now.
Right now. So today,
post Charlie Kirk, especially.
Right. I mean, what was the thing that Jimmy Kimmel said is being interpreted when he talked about, that it's one of the Magna guys. Oh, the right is saying that he was blaming the right instead of blaming the left, because the left is what it really... I mean, that's the discussion. But for me, there's way more serious discussions about that where I would, if I was I wouldn't be doing it from a right side, left side, conservative, liberal side, People want to talk about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. People will say, who are very critical about what just happened to Jimmy Kimmel, they'll say this is a kick in the gut of freedom of speech. This is somebody could argue, I don't know if they would, I was thinking this myself, that Charlie Kirk himself, if he saw what was happening here with people being fired for saying things, he'd be upset about it because he was such a freedom of speech advocate. Okay, well, that's one part of it. But then there's the other part where somebody would say, whoa, wait a minute. Should entertainers, comedians, rock stars, movie stars, should they be involved in political discourse? Was it right for Bruce Springsteen during his tour in Europe over the summer to talk at the beginning of his shows, as he did in some of his shows, about what was going on in America and what was happening? That's a different discussion. Was what Jimmy Kimmel actually said? Now, we don't want to shut up comedians. We want comedians to be able to be comedians, and politicians are the subject of comedic art, and it should be that. But wait a minute. What did he actually say that supposedly got? He talked about the fact of it wasn't a joke. It was about that. He said the MAGA people know that he was one of them or something like that. Well, that wasn't a joke. Should he be doing? There's 100 discussions to have, Mike. You could do 4 hours of talk radio about the Jimmy Kimmel being suspended story, the facts. If so, as long as we have the fact, and you could break it up into a lot of areas without having to end those. Let's say it was a 3-hour show. Somebody going, whoa, that was really right, or whoa, I didn't know he was woke. Whoa, man, that was. You could do it. And by the way, not only can you do it, I'm going to say this, you should do it. So if I was a program director, and I'd have no idea how to be one, by the way, but if I was a program director or if I was a host of a show and somebody said to me, okay, Lorne, listen, let's do this. We'll do it. We've got guest A, B, C, and D. So we got somebody coming on from. So we got to, you know where we're slanting this, right? We're slanting this and I'd say, why are we slanting it? So I would have to say, if somebody were to hire me, I would take it way back right to the beginning of the job interview. And I'd say, I'd love to do this with you, but you and I can never have this conversation. Hey, Lorne, good morning. The slant today is.
Yeah, but it's unspoken, Lorne. It is not there's no note. You're not going to find a smoking gun. So it's a terrible analogy.
Right. No.
But it is similar to when, I always bring this up, when Mike Wilner got suspended for being critical of, was it Cito Gaston? I'm trying to remember now. But he got suspended without pay, and they didn't tell him explicitly why, but he knew why, everyone else knew why, and it was essentially, it put everybody in line, right? So, and one last thing on the Kimmel thing, because there's still a whole topic I want to get to. You're going to be here several hours, Lorne Honickman. I hope you know that. But you can't even have the Jimmy Kimmel conversation without discussing political interference with the FCC, so the role of the FCC, and what's his name again? Donald J. Trump. See, essentially, that's the sun that these are all, they're all revolving around. So you've got the Trump influence via the FCC, and then Disney, the Mickey Mouse himself bending a knee, and
okay, but
yeah,
right, and there's a great what you just did right now.
Right.
If you and I were doing the show in the way I described
which would have to be a podcast.
If so, right now we'd say, all right, we're into the 3rd hour now, and we've been talking about the Jimmy Kimmel situation. Let's talk about this, Mike. Let's talk about the political influence, because I know a lot of people out there think that this was all politically motivated and whatever. And I'll give you my take on it. You'll give me your take. We'll open the phone lines. We'll see what people think. But again, I don't care about the difference of opinion. What I care about is the misinformation of facts. So if somebody says to me right now, well, Lorne, here's the fact. This isn't an opinion, Lorne. Jimmy Kimmel was fired or suspended indefinitely because Donald Trump put pressure on ABC to do so. You know that. That's a fact, Lorne. I'd say, no, I don't know that. If you want to tell me that, and now can you restate what you just said, but please, to be accurate, please say these words. You know, Lorne, in my opinion, I believe, in my opinion, I don't have proof of this, but I really feel that this was a political firing. Okay. Now I may say, okay, thanks, whoever. This is my opinion. I do truly believe this was a 100% business decision. This is a business decision by companies that own most of the affiliates of ABC. So they got lots of cash involved, and they've heard the FCC, and they work under regulation, and they work under broadcast standards. And I know that somebody has filed a lawsuit against, and we got a president that does a lot of litigious activity, and he sues a lot of media companies, and I got affiliates that are really, really afraid right now. Everything I just said to you right now is fact, right? That's true. So in my opinion, I think this was simply a business decision. I don't think that this was decided last night or 2 nights ago when Jimmy Kimmel said this. I think this was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. This was obviously in the mix, or in my opinion it was, that this could happen at any moment, and they were waiting for perhaps that straw, that final thing. So that's an okay discussion to have, Mike. That's okay. We can have that. But but what I said earlier today, or it seems earlier because we've been talking a long time, that somebody right now is going to tell me that they know exactly what happened, and they're going to say 100% this is what it is, and they're going to tell me, that as a fact. I'm going to say, okay, don't worry about me, because I'm not listening to you as the originator of the fact. But what I'm really worried about, are you going to put that on your social media? Because the 300,000 people that follow you, they're going to now treat it as a fact, and they won't even listen to you. They'll just look at your headline.
Misinformation is rampant online.
Huge.
If Facebook, well, I won't even say Facebook particularly. I just notice it every day on Facebook, but it is all social media, I suppose.
Yeah, but it is social media, and there is no regulation.
Right. Yeah.
My law practice has consisted over the last 10 years of these types of discussions. I'm really sorry. I don't know how to get it down. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the courts will give us an order to get it down. I don't know how to stop it right now. I don't know. I know he or she's hiding behind a cloak of anonymity. We have no idea who it is. We may be able to get. I don't know. I appreciate the fact that your business has been destroyed in the last 24 hours. I understand that. I don't know if I can help you. Those types of conversations over and over and over again. Somebody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? I don't like business A. He's a competitor of mine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on my social media, and I'm going to start talking about stuff about his business. And I'll just make it up or whatever. Now, what I just said to you right there is a real life situation of a client that I had.
I'll bet.
So that's what we live in. That's the world we live in. So the people at ABC dealing with Jimmy Kimmel, they live in the world of the FCC. They live in the world of standard and regulations that they have to worry about. People online don't. There's nothing there. They don't have to worry. So me now, as the consumer of information, if I want to now get information, so I want to get information. It's the pandemic. I want to get information about vaccines. And I hate vaccines. And I hate the fact that the government is forcing us to take vaccines. So here we go. Now I can go through and I can sit there for 8 hours and read every anti-vaxxer in the universe. And all I have to do is, and I'll look at the headline, and the headline will say, vaccines killing 20 million people a day in here. Excellent. I'll like what. Tell me if I'm using the right social media words. I'll like it. Can I do that?
You could do that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll like
sure.
it.
Go ahead, Lorne. Like
Yeah.
it. This is back to your confirmation bias, and the sentence I say to my mom more than ever, because my mom always tell me, I heard this. It'll be like, I love blueberries. Okay, big blueberry head here. And I'm making this up. My mom will be like, oh, blueberries are bad for you. They cause something. And I say the same sentence to her. It's almost a daily occurrence now. I say, what's your source for that? And then she oh, you and your sources. And I'm like, no. Everything is sources. It'll be like Billy Bob's pharmaceuticalsite.com. Okay. And I'm like, okay, let me know when the BBC runs a story about it or whatever. So this misinformation is essentially either people are lazy or intentionally ignorant. Like it's intentional or it's uneducated. Why is it that, because we were taught this, I was taught this in high school. Cite your sources and make sure your sources are legitimate and trustworthy with some journalistic integrity behind them.
Exactly.
People don't do that. That's why this misinformation is rampant. You talked about the vaccines, and yes, somebody's going to tell you. I think I heard Donald Trump say something. There was a quote I read. He said 300 million Americans or something. There's only, how many Americans are there, right? So this is a ridiculous number he's tossing around of no scientific basis. And he's a bad source of everything, by the way. So I'd put him in the column of don't trust your sources. But yeah, we have to almost re-educate our society to understand what's the source. But then you get into trouble. Oh, I heard from people I know and trust that Israel, there was some news about Israel and Gaza. Okay, so we don't have time to go down this road, except to say I had read some pieces by very reputable journalists and and this person I know and told me they're lying. So essentially, if you say this happened, it was reported in BBC and CBC and CTV, and it was reported, and you saw New York Times, and you run down Washington Post, well, they're lying. So we're in an era now where even if you're citing what I deem to be reputable sources, they'll tell you, no, those are not good sources.
Right.
But then they'll cite stuff that I wouldn't let my kids use in an essay.
Right.
Like so
that's,
we can't agree on what's true anymore. So how can we have a conversation when we can no longer agree on the facts, because you have to establish the facts before you can chat about it.
That's what I just said. That's in fair comment is a defense in Canadian law. What is fair comment? It's opinion on provable facts. You have to, and what you just gave as the example, you named what you called the sources, and there'll be people who will say, no, well, look at what your sources are, Mike. Your sources are mainstream media. If it was here in Canada, to go, well, what's your source? Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, don't they get subsidies from the Liberal government? Okay, I mean, are you going to believe that?
Right.
So what can you do? And that's the problem. And what you know what happens? You know what the answer is to what you just said? The answer is people throw up their hands and go, well, whatever.
We can't talk about this because we can't agree on the facts.
Whatever. So people will say. Same thing about freedom of expression, and they'll say, well, that's okay. It's okay for them to say that, but somebody else, that's hate speech. Oh, wait a minute, no, that's hate. What? Well, what's freedom of expression? What's hate speech? Where's the line? Who draws the line? Where's the line drawn? Well, we try to do it here in Canada. We do have some laws that talk about what a hate crime is or whatever. But at the end of the day, people will say, oh, that, and they'll use the words cancel, right? They'll say, well, oh, he said that. Oh, why did he say that? That's terrible. That's okay. This person said that's fine. But wait a minute. But is that So what do I do? Well, I'm talking about the conundrum, and it frustrates the hell out of me. This is the only thing I do, Mike, to try and, because I am a news junkie, and I have to be able to try and so I'll try and source things. I'll try and look things and read whatever I can read. And then I have to make my determination. I have to say, okay, so how was that reported? Was that reported in a way that credibility, credentials? I came back to it all again. Who's telling me this? And what am I, how do I determine? And there's so many times we don't know this. We don't have time to get into it at all. But we saw, if I had come on after our election, I mean, when I saw the political reporting and the political reporting that goes on now, Mike, forget about the political reporting. Have you ever sat and watched the legislature in Ottawa? Have you ever watched Question Period?
No, in a moment, I'm going to tell you I watched some from this week online on YouTube.
Okay. Anybody who watches that, if you've never watched, you'll come out of it, you'll go, what did I just see? Wait a minute. The opposition asks this question. It's a yes or no answer, and the prime minister doesn't give any answer. And that's what happens in Parliament. What happens in that little dome in there called the legislature or wherever, do you say, oh, that's democracy in action? No, it's people are spinning things. You don't answer the question. You make sure your message gets out. So if I'm one of the people behind the scenes for a politician, whether it's the prime minister or a minister, we write out, we go, okay, here's our messages today. Okay, so when Poilievre says to you, Poilievre's going to get up, he's going to talk about the fact that we came in, we said we're going to get a deal with Trump. We told everybody we're going to get the deal. We told everybody elbows up. We're going into it. We're the only ones that can really fight it. We stopped him talking about the 51st state, blah, 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 blah. Poilievre's going to bring up the fact that you've done nothing. There's no deal, whatever. We don't care. Remember, we don't care anything about what he says. All we care about is here. Message this. This is what we did in the last 6 months. We did A, B, C, D, and E. So it doesn't matter what he asked. This is what you say. Got it? Yeah. Ready? Break. It's like a football huddle, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And how does that help? In my day, here he goes again. Here's the old man talking about in his day. But in my day, what would happen if I was covering Queen's Park? And that type of thing would happen because it's not a new phenomena. That's what happens in political forums. Somebody comes out, there's a big scandal, whatever it is. We had scrums. The premier of the province would come out and there'd be microphones in his face and questions are being fired back and forth because you don't have the protection anymore.
It's a pillar of democracy in action there.
We don't see that now. By the way, if there's scrums, quote unquote, the microphones are all set up. Everything's very, there's no, and people will say, oh, well, that was just theater. No, that was democracy.
Right.
And so anyway,
so Lorne, because I do want to get back to subdivisions. So
I think that would be a good wrap up for us right now.
What happened earlier this week, this happened where somebody sent me an angry note and just said that, oh, can't believe it. In Parliament right now, all MPs, even the Liberal MPs, were cheering for Charlie Kirk. This is the note I got, right? And they were like, you gotta write an email to your MP, right? So little backstory is my MP is a guy named James Maloney. I quite like him. He's a Liberal MP. He was actually on Toronto Mike last week. We talked about Ken Dryden. He was on with Steve Paikin and Bruce Dobigan. You should listen to this episode. This tribute to. I will. So I'm very friendly. Like I can get James Maloney on the phone right now, or we become buddies here. But I said no. I need to see this. Like I can't. I've been told I'm being enraged by this celebration of Charlie Kirk in our Parliament in Ottawa. So I watched it and I took it in its context of what it was, and I realized, oh, a Conservative MP was talking about how even if you disagree with someone, violence isn't the answer.
Right.
And basically, when you actually listen to what was being cheered and you take it in the context as it unfolded in Parliament, my rage level plummeted, and I wasn't angry about this, and it wasn't what I was kind of led to believe it was, and I did not write the email to my MP. But this is an example where
because you went and looked and saw
think
yourself.
Most people would skip that step of actually what exactly really happened, and they're like, I can't fucking believe they're standing in Parliament. Everybody, Mark Carney, everybody is standing in Parliament to celebrate the life of Charlie Kirk. That's not actually what happened.
Right.
But that's just a recent example, and we're all going to move on.
What a perfect example to use about why misinformation is so harmful and destructive, and why we live in where we are now. And it's all polarization, Mike.
100%. It's become left versus right, and I want to have conversations.
Us versus them. Yep.
I want to have conversations on Toronto Mike, and some people I get know, why do you talk to Bruce Dobigan? I get these notes because he's a Trumper and he's got some conservatives in Calgary, and he's been indoctrinized. And he's become very conservative. But I want to be able to have civil, respectful conversations with people. Where I lose my patience and become frustrated is when I realize, oh, we can't agree on the facts. This happened with Elon Musk. Elon Musk, and I hope I pronounced it right, Zeig Hitler. What is the term? Say it.
Yes. Okay.
How do you pronounce that word?
Heil Hitler.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. That's okay. So I think my German's rusty. Okay. But I watched him in video throw up 2 of those in a row, and I felt like I knew what I was watching. And you would talk to somebody like a Bruce Dobigan who would tell you, oh, he's just waving high. And then I said to Bruce, and this was on Toronto Mike, I said, okay, you do it now. He won't do it. Like, so he won't mimic the Elon Musk. And that, by the way, that's a long story short why you won't find any posts from me on the app formerly known as Twitter. Okay, we're going to move on now. I do want to tell you.
Because I'm looking at the time.
Okay, well, you've been verbose, my brother.
Yeah,
now,
no,
listen,
yeah.
I have to do this. I have to tell you that next Thursday, we're all collecting at the GLB Brew Pub at Jarvis and Queens Quay because Great Lakes is going to host us, and we'll get a free beer and we'll get some tasty food. So that's happening. That's TMLX 20. But Lorne, I want to tell you about TMLX 21 really quick here, which is we're all going to meet, and you're invited, Lorne. I'd love to see you there. November 29th at noon. This is a Saturday, the last Saturday of November. We're all collecting at Palma's Kitchen. I know you've been there before. It would be amazing if you showed up, jumped on the mic to say hi to everybody. Palma Pasta is going to feed us, and of course, Great Lakes is going to take care of us.
Let me put it in my calendar now.
Okay, November 29,
Okay.
noon.
Got it.
Palma's Kitchen.
Got it.
And I want to quickly tell the listenership that recyclemyelectronics.ca is where you go if you have old electronics or old cables. Don't throw it in the garbage because the chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca. I want to tell any FOTMs who are trying to create dynamic, creative work environments for their employees or for their colleagues, talk to Doug Mills at Blue Sky Agency. Talk to him about silence, quiet, comfortable, and customizable office pods. Doug is Doug at blueskyagency.ca. Just have a conversation with the lovely Doug Mills. And I will have a conversation soon with the good people at Waterfront BIA. That's coming next week. And as always, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. We talked about them when you were here for 40 minutes because you're shouting out Benjamins, it sounds like. But I shout out Ridley Funeral Home. I gave you lasagna last time. You know, I have beer for you. I've got gifts for you. I have to ask you if you listened to the Toronto Mike episode with Jack Berkowitz.
I did.
What did you think of Jack?
I liked it.
Toronto Mike?
I thought it was great. And what an interesting life he's led. And it it was actually pretty informative because, you know, Jack was one of the guys, I never knew him, but, you know, when you listen to ads and you listen to the owner of the place, that
Omni Jewel Crafters.
Omni Jewel Crafters, and you know, you just knew it. And you realized how much money he probably was spending and what he told you he was spending on his marketing, and so it was really interesting. It was interesting to hear about his radio career and how he was dumped in all the places that he went.
1010, 640, and 960 all said goodbye to Jack.
All said goodbye. So I did. I actually.
He's a big Lorne fan.
Is he? Well, I heard a little shout out there. Yeah,
he said he was a big fan of yours.
He thought I was. Didn't he think I was like living in London, Ontario?
Okay, so that's what I want to ask you about. He thought you were practicing law out of London, Ontario, and I said no, that's not true. Can you give us an update on your professional life because there's an update there, right?
There is an update. Yes, this just in: Lorne Honickman has joined his son Asher Honickman. Asher is a lawyer. And he's got his own law firm, very small law firm, and he and I talked for quite some time about his old man coming over and working with him. And I'd always say, Asher, you don't need me. You've done the, and Dad, it's not about need, and we can work together. So we're doing it. So I sort of carved down my practice. I left Brody Thorning and had a great run there, and I'm with Asher now. So the only thing that seems to be a tiny bit counterintuitive, I've been there about 6 or 7 weeks, is I'm working so far just as hard with not as much help. So. So that's, but other than that, yeah. But we're gonna do
team.
Yeah, we're gonna do stuff together. So it's kind of fun, and that's why I'm keeping an eye on the clock because I know my boss.
Yeah, we're gonna shut this down in 2 minutes here. So there's a professional update. You were never practicing out of London, Ontario.
No, there you go.
Who knows where Jack? That's misinformation. Okay, Peter Gross. There's no information with this man. He will definitely be at Palma's Kitchen for TMLX 21. Everyone, if I wasn't clear, everyone's invited, not just Lorne and Peter. I want everybody who can hear my voice right now to come to Palma's Kitchen on November 29 at noon. But Peter Gross tells me he's going to visit very soon for a special feature about a very special man who is a cameraman that you worked with. Tell us about, just in a nutshell, do you know what Peter's working on?
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, tease it, yeah.
Okay. So you've probably heard me talk about Bill Atanasoff, and you asked earlier about Al McCormick. So the two cameramen that I started work with, Al McCormick, Bill Atanasoff, and Bill and Al are very close friends as well. And those of you who may not know, Bill was in a tragic accident. He got hit by a car, covering a story, and it's going to be coming up on November 10th, I believe it is, 15 years since this happened. Wow. Bill became a quadriplegic and a blind quadriplegic. But Bill is this incredible, incredible person. I've been involved in his life since then, even before we were good friends, of course, and Peter and all of us, people who worked with Bill and have followed his story and what Peter's doing. And Peter told me about this, and I thought, wow. He goes, I'm putting together a little feature on Bill. I'm interviewing a lot of people, and I'm going to come on Toronto Mike, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to throw to the clips and come out of it, and I'm talking to you. I'm talking to Jim McKinney. I'm talking to Al. I'm talking to his sister. I'm talking to Bill. And he interviewed Bill. And Bill, people are going to be able to hear Bill, because one of the most incredible things about Bill, and you'll hear me say this, is a man who is a quadriplegic, a man who is blind, who was a cameraman. He was a tennis player. He lived an incredible life. Never have you heard this person feel sorry for himself in any which way possible. Always appreciative. And you're going to get to hear, I hope. And Peter said, this is what Peter just told me. I just spoke to him a couple of days ago, and he said, I got great stuff from Bill.
Wow.
Great. So that's coming up.
I can't believe I get to host this thing.
No,
so
you are.
I have it in my calendar for the 29th of September.
I strongly urge, and I know people are saying, oh, God, Mike got Honickman to promote this, because no. Everybody, I really hope that people will listen to this. It's just a story of one person, just one person. A lot of people say, well, Bill Atanasoff, who was a cameraman, said, okay, all right, but the reason you listen to it is because it's like anything, the life of a person. And when you hear his story and you hear what people are saying about it, I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. And look at, and Peter, to his credit, put this together. Yeah. And
he's great at that.
And he's great at that. And he was great at it in his day, quote unquote. So I'm looking forward to it. And I hope everybody tunes in and comes on at some point.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast about Bob Dylan.
Well, we didn't even talk about Bobby Dylan. That's going to be, I just thought to myself, geez, we covered everything, but we didn't cover. We didn't talk about.
Well, we're doing it right now. You teased me multiple times. I don't like to be teased.
I know. I thought. You know what? Okay. Let's keep it in the tease category. You and I talk. I'm going to talk behind the scenes with you, Mike, and we'll talk about, because I think that what happened when that movie came out with Timothée Chalamet, and people who knew nothing about Bob Dylan went, whoa. I think that it might be a really fun thing to do and get people to listen to this man.
Well, it'll be fun for sure, but you're Dylan, and again, you're the combination of broadcaster, lawyer, and Dylan aficionado. Like, that's a very rare blend, and you'd be perfect for this.
Rare. Nobody else.
So let's upgrade it from tease to a commitment.
Oh, no. You see, look at what he's doing. Look at what he's doing, everybody.
He's a lawyer.
This is, no. He's always a promoter. Toronto Mike, one of the best.
I learned from Jack.
One of the best, if not the best, and deservedly so. Thanks for having me on, Mike, and let's talk again soon.
You realize if you combine the times of your 40 minutes and then this episode, so this episode's about an hour 40. You did 40 before, so that's how long we talked over the last couple of weeks. I loved it. Thanks for doing this, Lorne.
My pleasure.
You're a good man. We'll definitely talk soon about Dylan on your podcast. And that. Stu Stone wants me to really go hard on it, okay? And, you said I'm a showman, so I'm going to do it one more time. And that brings us to the end of our 1,764th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. That's patrons like you. Go to patreon.com/TorontoMike and become a member today. Great Lakes Brewery. They're hosting us for TMLX 20 next Thursday. Palma Pasta. They're hosting us for TMLX 21 on November 29th at noon at Palma's Kitchen. Toronto's Waterfront BIA. They'll be here next week. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Blue Sky Agency. Right, Doug, will ya? And Ridley Funeral Home. Subscribe to Life's Undertaking. Brad Jones has an excellent podcast you should listen to. See you all tomorrow when I'm catching up with Ben Rayner, formerly of the Toronto Star. He's having some tough times. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. Ben Rayner back on Toronto Mike. See you then. Okay, Lorne, we're doing this in 5, 4, 3.
I'm Lorne Honickman, lawyer and former City TV's legal specialist. And the following episode of FOTMcast is intended for real heads only. If you're not deeply immersed in the TMU, a devout FOTM, do not listen. I'm not kidding. Stop playing this episode now.
Perfect, brother. Now you're dismissed. Watch your head.